The Talksport Fan Network.
The ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.
Hello Cherries fans, and welcome back to Up the Cherries in all departments. And yes, Milo Savljevic is starting to cause some real headlines, and he's made his debut last week against Brighton, and has given us Cherries fans a glimpse of why he's considered to be one of the most exciting prospects and most exciting defenders in European football right now. At only 18 years old, he's already made waves with his performances for Red Star Belgrade, and now looks set to continue that at AFC Bournemouth. So the centre-back, he stands at 6'4". He was born on June the 28th, 2007, and only turning 18 this past summer. So he's the youngest player to start for Bournemouth in the Premier League at 18 years and 77 days. He's aerial dominant, composed under pressure, and tactically sharp. He made his Premier League debut, as we know, in Bournemouth's 2-1 win over Brighton, playing the full 90 minutes and racking up some impressive stats as well for a debut, especially for a player so young, with 9 clearances, 6 headed clearances, 3 blocked shots, tackles won. He won a total of 4 tackles, had an 87% pass accuracy, won 7 out of 9 duels, and didn't pick up any bookings. So for a player of such a young age, I'm sure everybody is very, very impressed with those stats. Milo Savljevic anchored Bournemouth's defence with maturity, well beyond his tender years, and in my opinion, complemented Marcus Nesse very well over those 90 minutes. But Milo, we call him Milo for short, it was effective in neutralising aerial threats from Brighton's set pieces, reading the game and stepping up to intercept passes before any danger had developed, staying composed under pressure, especially when Brighton were pushing for an equaliser towards the end of the game. I felt that he really was composed there. His performance has drawn praise from pundits and fans alike, with many calling him a natural leader, which you can really see, but definitely a future star of the game. Bournemouth's back line looked noticeably more organised with him at the heart of the defence, which obviously, when we look at the future, the rest of the season, that gives Andoni some real reassurance that he's going to have, a real good pick of a back line with obviously the likes of Marcus Nesse, Diakite as well. So, and it also probably will give him a bit of a headache on maybe who to pick, which is a wonderful headache to have because he's got some real class defenders there. Before landing at Bournemouth, Milo Savljevic was heavily linked with a move to the Scottish Premier League, believe it or not, with Celtic, who reportedly had a £6 million bid turned down by Red Star Belgrade. But the Bournemouth move has been seen as a real coup for us, securing a player who a lot of pundits and a lot of fans are calling a generational talent. So, a really good coup for Bournemouth, and we've seen that in those first 90 minutes of his Bournemouth career. But how does the future look for this generational talent? Well, he's already being touted as a future Serbian international, which I think we can see he's definitely got, international credentials, and obviously a Premier League mainstay. Now, let's hope that's as a long time of that spent with Bournemouth. Obviously, us as Bournemouth fans were all thrilled, and rightly so. And we can see he could anchor our defence for many, many years to come. So let's just dive in slightly to a tactical breakdown of Milo, and let's see how he stacks up against maybe other rising centre-backs. So his defensive intelligence already, from just watching him against Brighton, you can see how he reads the game. He reads exceptionally well for his age. On Saturday, you could see he intercepts passes before they become threats. He maintains tight positioning and he was really caught out of line against Brighton. You can see how strong defensively he will be, even against fluid attacking systems, which he's going to come up against, some real attacking talent in the Premier League. So, I think he's going to be able to compose himself very, very well against the very, very top players in this league. In the air, as we have seen already, and we touched on, at 6'4", he's a towering presence in both boxes. So I think he's going to be very, very key from attacking set pieces as well as defending set pieces. So, that's a massive, massive benefit for us. He will win the majority of his aerial duels, making him a set piece asset and a defensive ball against long balls. As we have seen previously with Dean Housen, Milo is similar in some ways and many ways, and calm when pressed, for example, often finds clean outlets rather than panicking or hoofing the ball clear. There's a bit more class about him, which we obviously saw that with Dino last season, and now obviously as Real Madrid are seeing that week in, week out. He's comfortable receiving the ball in tight spaces, which is kind of rare for someone of his age. But he does have a lot of similarities, I think, in my opinion, with Dino, who, like I say, is now obviously enjoying playing for Real Madrid. Let's see his tactical versatility and his strengths. He can play in a back four or as a central figure in a back three. Shows early signs of leadership, organising the back line and communicating effectively, which I think, again, like we had with Dino last year, I think, Milo might be more of a leader possibly than Dino. And, his communication is, looked very, very effective with himself and Marcus Senesi last weekend. Definitely signs of a future captain at club and probably international level as well. So, but how does he compare to other young centre-backs of similar age? So there'll be some stats coming up on the screen now of some comparisons. And as you can see there's several players that we have compared him against with their style and strengths, which for me is quite interesting. And as you can see there from some of the players that we have compared him to there, I think you can see that, we have got a really, really good player in Milo. And, in comparison to some of the other young talent there, I think, we've probably got the best of the bunch, definitely. But let's have a look at how his career projection is looking, how his projected development curve looks. So at the age of 18 to 20 is known as the foundation phase. So the focus for the player at the moment is physical growth, adapting to that Premier League, and his tactical consistency. And a milestone for him between the age of 18 and 20, which this milestone I think could be sooner rather than later, is establish himself as a starting centre back for Bournemouth. And I think after Saturday's performance against Brighton, I think that could well be a milestone that he achieves fairly soon. Traits, refined, his aerial duels, positioning, composure under pressure. So, I mean, that's his foundation phase, which is, his development curve. If you look at the age 21 to 23, which is known as the breakout phase, his focus then will switch slightly, a bit more to leadership, and ball playing confidence. And between that age, I think he will have a lot of international exposure, definitely. Milestone for that kind of period of his career will be obviously earning senior caps for Serbia. And I think by then, and I hate to say it, but I think he's going to be well on to being linked to top 6 Premier League clubs, if not before. It's just, we know with quality players like this, and as we've seen previously with Dino, he will attract attention. His traits at this time, distribution, anticipation, and recovery pace. But then his prime, if we are lucky enough to keep him until his prime, age 26 to 24 to 26, the prime phase, focus then will be elite level consistency, and he will probably and more than likely be Champions League experienced by then. But a milestone would become one of Europe's top defenders. Definitely captain material. Says potential captain material there, but I believe definitely captain material. But by the time he's 24, he will be one of the best defenders in Europe, definitely. So yeah, that's just a little look there on how maybe he will develop over the next several years, and let's hope the majority of that will definitely be in a Bournemouth shirt. But let's just have a look at possibly what may happen if he comes across certain types of strikers. We've got 3 comparisons to look at. So in the Premier League, Erling Haaland. So the challenge is, Milo's going to face this season playing against Haaland will be the physicality and the movement in the box. So Milo, to be fair, he will, and he does hold his own aerially. But at this stage, he will probably need to be supported by the rest of the team for Haaland's off the ball runs. But he is likely to force Haaland into wider positions. So yeah, I think when we play City, whether he's established himself by then or whether Andoni is using him in a rotation kind of system, I think Milo could be the man that could mark Haaland when we play City. Not looking likely, but if he was to come up against someone like Harry Kane, for example, challenges Milo would face against Kane is probably the link-up play and the late runs into the box. But with Milo's positioning and his anticipation, that would help neutralise Kane's deeper role. But he reads the play well, and he must avoid diving in against players with the likes of Kane's ability, because we all know, diving in on players like Kane will always, you'll always be liable to give the foul away. So. But if he was to play against Kane, I think he could possibly cause Kane some problems. But what about Mbappe? If he was to come up against Mbappe, obviously the challenge against Mbappe for Milo would be his pace and his 1v1 dribbling. I would say from looking at the game against Brighton, I see he struggled a little bit in open space. But when Bournemouth stayed compact, I think that's when he will excel into his strongest defending. But if he played against Mbappe tomorrow, he would force Mbappe to play back rather than penetrate the defence, I think. But yeah, I mean, that's just some wonderland there comparisons. Obviously, we know he will have the opportunity of facing Haaland, but there's just 3 different kinds of players there just to compare how Milo would probably face how he would be if he came up to face those strikers. But I just think that yet again our recruitment department has found an excellent player, someone that's going to mature into one of the best players in his position in Europe, if not possibly the world. So really excited that we've managed to sign this guy, and to keep it so quiet as well was just amazing. So, but how would a scouting report for Milo look at the moment? So, like, if we're looking at it now, so like technical attributes, his ball control, he's got such a clean first touch. I thought when we were watching the Brighton game the other day, and he didn't look panicked at all. Even under pressure, he never looked panicked. And yeah, good first touch. His passing range, I thought, was solid. Short distribution. Possibly need to improve slightly on the long balls, but yeah, in terms of passing range is looking good. His tackling I thought was precise and very, very well timed. And there was no reckless challenges against Brighton at all. Aerial ability, like I've said, dominant in the air, both defensively and offensively. So his physical attributes, strength, uses his frame effectively. He looks like a player that's never really going to get bullied, I don't think. which is excellent to see. His pace, he does have decent pace. I wouldn't say it's rapid, but I would say, part of his game is going to evolve around his positioning rather than his pace. His stamina, I thought his stamina was excellent for such a young age in the top division across 90 minutes. And his injury record, he's not had any major setbacks in his career so far. Obviously, he's only been a very, very short career. But he's had no major setbacks. So, he's got a clean record on that front so far. And let's long hope that continues and he stays fit for Bournemouth for a very, very long time. If we look at the player, maybe from a mental attribute perspective, obviously composure-wise, for his age, really calm, exceptionally calm. Probably is the best way to describe it. His positioning, like we say, he reads the game well, and he often intercepts rather than reacts. So I think he reads the game so well that he anticipates the pass and reacts to that in a very, very quick manner. From a leadership perspective, like I say, future captain for definite. And I thought he was very, very vocal on Saturday. And it must be very brave of him to come into the Bournemouth back line, considering obviously there's players that have played together for a while. Obviously, Hill playing right back and Marcus Senesi partnering him at centre back have obviously been part of the club now for quite some time, and obviously Adrian Truffert has settled in very well at left back. So for him to come in and command that back four in such a way, I thought was excellent. Really, decision making. I think that's something that's just going to get better and better over time as well. He's rarely caught out and chooses smart passes over risky ones as well. I don't think there was really any risky passes he played, if I remember rightly, against Brighton. So, really, really impressed with his attributes so far. Tactically, as he fits, he thrives in a low to mid block system with quick transitions, which for us, quick transitions is vital to our game. And like I've said, he can anchor the back four. He can also play as a back three. So that gives some real attributes there, in terms of formation. If the manager did ever want to change formation, something that we all know that he rarely does. But if he ever did want to change, formation and go with a back three, someone like Milo there is perfect to anchor in the centre of a back three. So, ideal for teams as well that value defensive structure and aerial dominance, which I think is something that, aerial dominance is probably something that we probably need to improve on. Definitely as well in terms of set pieces when we're attacking. I think, we need to be a bit more of an aerial threat sometimes. So I think Milo would definitely bring that to us, and, that's only excellent. So we've had a look at his projection as well. So obviously, between the ages of 18 and 20 and so on. But, short term, Premier League starter, especially in physical matchups. So, if we don't see him starting every game this season, I do think he's going to be used a lot, especially when there's more physical players up front. He can come on or start a game and make a real nuisance of himself and really keep out those physical strikers and keep them at bay. Midterm, obviously, national team call up for the first team. And, I think, dare I say it, I think at some point during the midterm of his career, hoping he's already still with Bournemouth by then, but by then he will be attracting some real attention from across the whole of Europe, from all of the top leagues, not just the top six in the Premier League. But, I do think there's going to be a lot of clubs monitoring this player for definite. Long term, I think he is a champion. He will be a Champions League level defender. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And I think, he's going to have the leadership skills that big teams will possibly want. So, the question is he our next 50 million plus man? I think, that is definitely the type of player we've got on our hands at the moment. Is there areas for him to develop? Of course there is. He's only a young pro. He's made a real impact at Red Star Belgrade. He's come in and played one game in the Premier League for us, which, I thought was an excellent performance. But of course, there's always room for improvement. Agility in tight spaces. Can he become exposed by nimble forwards? Quite possibly. Progressive passing. Needs to improve line breaking balls, quite possibly. An experience versus elite attack is still learning how to handle. I think he's still learning how to handle world class movement. He hasn't come up against any, real world class strikers in the Premier League, and he is going to, and that's going to be a test. That's going to also be an area where he will develop. His debut, ended up with him winning the Man of the Match award. From the whole team's perspective, I thought there was a lot of real solid performances against Brighton, but I think for someone coming in and making the impact that he's done at such a young age, I can see why he won the Man of the Match award. I'm sure a lot of people may have thought Alex Scott should have won it for his goal, or Anton Semenyo for another solid performance. There's names we could, reel off the list that, could have deserved that Man of the Match award against Brighton. But I think for someone who's come in so mature at such a young age and shown his real potential, I think is, personally, it was good that he won it, and I'm sure it's going to be really, really good for his confidence as well, and it will help with him settling in. That he's come in, he's put in such a good performance against Brighton, and it's been recognised. Diakite comes back. It's going to be a real decision for Andoni Iraola, when we play Newcastle and games beyond that. Is it a case that Diakite is going to come straight back in, or, in my opinion, you don't really change a winning team unless you have to, or do we continue with Milo? I think Diakite is a great defender since he's come in. I thought he settled in really well, and I thought him and Marcus Senesi have made a really good partnership. So it's going to be really interesting over the next few games to see who kind of cements themselves as that back two centre backs there. It could be in a case of, is it a case of Milos, maybe dislodges Senesi? I mean, it's a real headache for the manager, a really good one to have. So be interesting to see how that develops over, the next few games. I think Milos' career could go sky high. I really do. And I think with the right coaching and the right experience and game time, I think that he's going to become, a really, really good player. I think he's probably working under the right manager, to be honest. I'm not just saying that. But I think he could become, very, very similar, maybe a hybrid of a couple of Manchester United legends, actually, dare I say it, in Vidic, who had the grit, and, someone like Rio, who had the elegance. I could really see Milo being a blend of those two kind of players. But let's see what happens. But is he our next 50 million plus man? I think his value is definitely going to go up over the next couple of seasons, and let's hope he stays with Bournemouth for a very, very long time, because he is an excellent prospect. But yeah, thank you for watching the video. Please give us a like and a subscribe if you haven't also done that also already. But until the next one, all that's left to say is a big thank you to our sponsors, those at Dental at the Banks. So if you need any dental treatment, do log on to their website and see what they can do for you there, at www.dentalonthebanks.co.uk. And also Touchpoint Telecom. Big shout out to Mark and his team for their continued support for this season as well. And don't forget, we're also part of the Talksport fan network. But until the next one, all that's left to say is up the cherries.
I should be like you, Mel. ultimate on-demand destination for the UK's best fan-led football podcasts.
Want authentic supporter insight on all things Bournemouth? Follow Up the Cherries in all departments on the Talksport Fan Network.
Club-dedicated content created by the fans, for the fans.
Search Talksport Fan Network.